I still don't know why I said yes to that dinner. Emily had been talking about it for a week. A big networking night, a team celebration. You should meet my coworkers. She was the one who picked out my suit that morning. Navy, slim fit. The one she said made me look put together. Funny thing, that compliment felt good at the time. It meant something. Looking back now, it almost feels like a setup. I stopped by a flower shop on the way. One of those local places where they wrap the bouquet in brown paper and twine. I got her yellow tulips. She once told me they reminded her of her grandmother's garden. I remember thinking how much she'd like that detail. Stupid, maybe, but I was trying. That's the thing. I really was trying. The venue was downtown Austin, high ceilings, glass walls, and the kind of lighting that makes you feel underdressed no matter what you're wearing. Her company didn't do anything small. I walked in feeling a little like an outsider, tugging at my collar, juggling flowers, checking my reflection in the glass. But I told myself, just be normal. Be friendly, supportive. Her people will see what she sees in you. Only, I'm not sure she sees it anymore. She didn't notice me at first. I spotted her from across the room, laughing with a group near the bar, standing a little too close to a tall guy in a tailored jacket. That was Brent. I didn't know it yet, but I already hated him. I stood there like an idiot for a second, holding the flowers, unsure whether to walk over or wait for her to notice me. She didn't. One of her coworkers, a woman in an emerald dress, noticed first and gave me a polite smile. Emily finally turned when she saw the woman wave. "Hey, babe," she called out, walking over and giving me a quick kiss on the cheek, a short, distracted one. Her eyes were already glancing back over her shoulder. "You made it." I said I would. "I know, it's just... We started early. Brent brought some tequila samples from a client, and you know how this team is." She didn't ask about the flowers. I handed them to her anyway. She smiled, said, "Ah," but passed them off to someone else a few seconds later, already moving on. That little moment, it stung more than I admitted to myself at the time. But I kept pace behind her, following her into a world that didn't feel like mine. The table was long, loud, filled with half-empty wine glasses and plates of designer food no one was really eating. People were mid-conversation when we sat down. Emily beside Brent, me across from them. Her hand grazed his shoulder casually, like they'd done it a dozen times. I tried to ignore it. Introductions were made, most people nodding politely. Some didn't even look up. I was Thomas, her fiancé, and that label felt more like a title than a presence. Brent gave me a half-smile and a firm handshake. He had that confident air, the kind of guy who uses first names before you've given them. "Good to meet you, man. Emily's told me a lot." His tone was casual, but something in his eyes made me uneasy. "Likewise," I said, trying not to show my discomfort. Dinner dragged on in a blur of inside jokes and jargon I didn't understand. Emily was animated, charming. She always was in groups, but this time something felt off. She wasn't drawing me in. She was performing, and I wasn't part of the act. Then came the moment, the one I keep replaying. Someone was talking about ad campaigns and digital reach, terms I only half understood, but I tried to join the conversation anyway. "Sounds like a good use of regional targeting," I said, referencing something I'd overheard her explaining before. Emily laughed. Not a chuckle. A full, sharp laugh that turned a few heads. "He's just an office clerk," she said, waving a hand toward me. "It's funny that he thinks he understands how marketing works." The table erupted. At least most of it. Some laughed awkwardly. Some looked down. Brent smirked but said nothing. I just sat there, staring at her, my throat tightening. She didn't look at me. Not really. Just kept smiling, as if nothing had happened. That's the part one think about the most. Not what she said, but how natural it felt to her. Like I was a punchline she'd used before. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out the ring. I didn't say a word, just took it off my finger, slowly, and placed it gently on the table between us, right in front of her wine glass. Emily's eyes flicked to it. Her smile faltered, only for a second. "Oh my God, Thomas!" she said, half laughing. It was a joke. Don't be so sensitive. She looked around the table. He does this. He's got this. Drama streak. No one laughed this time. She glanced at Brent, maybe hoping for a backup chuckle. Instead, he just shrugged, taking a sip of his wine like he was watching a show he didn't want to pause. You have to play by the rules in companies like this, she added, still trying to smooth it over. It's just how things are. Everyone's tough here. But under the table. Yeah, I saw it. Brent reached across and gave her hand a squeeze. Small, subtle, like they thought no one noticed. I noticed. I stared at that ring, still sitting there on the white linen like a bullet someone forgot to fire. I wanted to say something, anything, but there was nothing left to explain. That tiny squeeze under the table was the loudest thing in the room. After a long minute, I stood up. No yelling, no big exit. Just quietly pushed my chair back, picked up my jacket, and left the ring where it was. I didn't look back, but I heard her voice as I walked away. Something like, he's overreacting, or he'll calm down. Maybe she thought I was being dramatic. Maybe she thought I'd text her on the way home and say I was sorry for embarrassing her. But here's the truth. That was the moment I realized she wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't even surprised. She knew exactly what she was doing. The walk home felt like it took hours. Maybe it did. I didn't even check the time. I just walked. Past the glittering downtown lights, past the couples on patios laughing over drinks, past the invisible line where the city gives way to silence. It was warm out, but I felt cold. I remember that clearly. My fingers wouldn't stop shaking. Not from the temperature, but from the aftershock. That moment at the table kept looping in my head. Emily's laugh, the way she dismissed me like I was just some placeholder, and that quiet hand squeeze under the table like punctuation. It was all right there, obvious in hindsight, and yet, I kept asking myself one thing over and over. How did I miss it? I knew the answer. I hadn't missed it. I just ignored it. The signs had been there. Not flashing neon ones, no. Emily was smarter than that. But looking back now, it's like someone had stitched red thread through our days, and I had trained myself not to see the color. Started subtle. At first, she began staying later at the office. Deadlines, she'd say. Brent's pushing us hard. At the time, I believed her. I even admired it. I told myself she was ambitious, dedicated, qualities I had always loved about her. But the frequency grew. Once or twice a week turned into 3, then 4. And then the emergency weekend planning sessions started. Sometimes she wouldn't even come home until midnight. I'd stay up for her, leave the porch light on like a lighthouse waiting for a ship I wasn't sure was still heading home. She always smelled like some expensive cologne when she walked in. Not mine. Not hers either. It was musky, expensive, the kind of scent that lingers deliberately. When I asked her about it once, she laughed. You're being ridiculous, she said, kissing my cheek. Probably from hugging people at work. You know how touchy people are after long meetings. She made me feel silly for asking. Like I was insecure. Like I was the problem for noticing. So I stopped asking. That was the first time I swallowed the question instead of saying it out loud. Then there was her phone. She used to leave it everywhere, on the kitchen counter, face up on the coffee table. That changed. One day, I noticed she'd started keeping it on silent. And it was always face down. Always. If it buzzed while we were watching TV, she'd ignore it. Then suddenly remember something urgent and disappear to the hallway. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. I told myself trust means letting people have their space. But there's a difference between space and distance. And we were no longer in the same room. I remember one night, maybe a month before the dinner, I caught her smiling at her phone in the kitchen. Not a funny meme kind of smile. Not the polite work text smile either. It was soft, private. And when I walked in, she locked the screen fast. Like a reflex. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, she said quickly, too quickly. Just a message from Jenna. She's having guy trouble again. She was always quick with her stories. Smooth, practiced. I nodded, but something in my stomach twisted. I didn't push. I should have. There were other things, too. like how she stopped asking me about my day. She used to care, really care about the little stuff. Even if it was just a boring story from the office or a dumb conversation I had with Gary in IT, she'd smile and ask follow-ups. But then one day she just stopped. I'd talk and she'd scroll. I'd share and she'd nod, glassy-eyed. Eventually, I stopped talking as much. Not because I didn't want to, but because I could feel her pulling away like a tide I couldn't swim against. But the biggest red flag? The weekend she said she couldn't come with me to my mom's anniversary trip. We'd planned it months in advance. My whole family was going, siblings, cousins, people flying in from out of state. It was the kind of gathering that only happens once every few years. Emily was excited about it at first. She even helped pick out a gift for my mom. But then, 2 days before we were set to leave, she told me she couldn't make it. "Brent's launching the new campaign Monday," she said, rubbing her temples like she was exhausted just thinking about it. "We have a ton to finish. I'd go if I could, but this is a huge opportunity." I was disappointed, sure, but I trusted her. That's what people in relationships do, right? They trust. I went to the trip alone. I told everyone Emily was working on a huge project, and everyone nodded, understanding. She even texted my mom, said she was sorry to miss it. My mom replied with a heart emoji. Then, on the last night of the trip, I opened Instagram. I wasn't even looking for anything, just mindlessly scrolling. That's when I saw it. Emily had posted a story, a short video, maybe 4 seconds long. A wine glass, some dim lighting, flickering candles in the background, soft jazz playing. It wasn't her usual aesthetic. Felt mate. Romantic. Not like her typical gym selfies or motivational quotes. I tapped on it again. The geotag was a hotel downtown. One of those sleek boutique places with a rooftop bar and valet parking. Definitely not a workspace. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to make sense of it. She said she was working, but that wasn't the office. That wasn't stress and deadlines. That was mood lighting and wine. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, everything okay?" "I saw your story," I said. A beat of silence. Then she laughed. "Oh, that was old. From a girls' night like 2 months ago. You know how stories save in drafts. You tagged the hotel." "Ugh, that must have been a glitch," she said, brushing it off. "Honestly, Thomas, are you okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired." "You always do this," she sighed. "Overthink things. You need to relax more. Go take a walk or something. Enjoy your trip, babe." And that was that. The subject changed. My instincts dulled by her certainty, and I let it go. But I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the video, the lighting, the way she sounded so casual on the phone. She made me feel like I was paranoid. But deep down, something in me had already started to shift. After I got home, things didn't improve. If anything, they got worse. She kept staying out late, kept brushing me off when I asked about her day. One night I asked if she was okay. She just looked at me blankly and said, "Why wouldn't I be?" I didn't have a good answer, and that was the problem. Everything I was feeling lived in the space between words, between what she said and what she didn't. It's strange how people can be in the same room and still be miles apart. But I told myself what most people tell themselves when they don't want to know the truth. It's probably nothing. I'm just tired. She's stressed. I'm overreacting. The truth was right in front of me. She was slipping away, day by day, and I was too scared to ask why. Until that dinner. Until the ring on the table. Until the laugh that told me everything her words never did. Now, all those little moments I brushed off, the cologne, the phone, the late nights, the story with the wine glass, they weren't just signs. They were warnings. And I ignored every single one. But not anymore. They say people don't really change. That what you see in the beginning is who they are at the core. I used to believe that. I believed it about Emily, the version of her I met. Ambitious, sharp, loyal, that was the one I clung to. But people do change. Or maybe they reveal themselves piece by piece, once they realize you're too invested to walk away. After the dinner, I didn't confront her. I didn't shout or demand answers. I didn't even sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen for hours in the dark, staring at nothing in particular, listening to the faint ticking of the clock and the occasional car rolling by outside. It was like my body was waiting for my mind to catch up. I thought about leaving, thought about packing a bag and disappearing for a few days, just to breathe. But something inside me held back. I wasn't done. Not yet. I needed to understand what had actually happened to my life. Because somewhere along the way, the reality I thought I was living split off into something else. Something secretive and cruel. And Emily, she was fluent in both. The next morning, I logged into our shared financial folders. Not because I suspected anything in particular, at least that's what I told myself, but because I suddenly felt the need to check the facts. I'd been gaslit enough to start doubting even my own senses. There used to be a folder labeled Mortgage Planning, 2025. It was where I dumped every scanned receipt, every pre-approval doc, every conversation with our broker. I handled most of that stuff. Emily said it bored her and I didn't mind. Felt good to be useful. But that folder was gone. I searched the recycle bin. Nothing. I checked the email archive. Nothing. It wasn't a glitch. It was erased cleanly, carefully, like someone knew what they were doing. I stared at the screen for a long time, not blinking, not breathing. That folder had everything. Proof of my contributions, the signed drafts, the final lender sheets. And I knew, deep down, Emily wouldn't have even known how to access half of it, unless she had help. I should have said something then. But instead, I did what I'd been trained to do. I rationalized. Maybe she was organizing. Maybe she renamed the folder. Maybe it's buried somewhere else. I didn't want to believe what I was starting to suspect. That the erasing wasn't metaphorical. That someone was actively cutting me out of my own life. It wasn't long after that when I came home early and everything changed. It was a Thursday. I'd left work a few hours ahead of schedule. Some HR training that got canceled. I didn't text Emily. I thought maybe I'd surprise her. Bring home her favorite takeout from that Thai place she liked. A stupid idea in retrospect. When I walked into the apartment, I noticed it immediately. Pair of shoes in the entryway. Not mine. Not hers either. Men's dress shoes. Polished, expensive looking. Sitting there like they belonged. I stood frozen for a second, heart thudding. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. No sound of the TV. No music. Just stillness. I walked slowly toward the bedroom, half hoping I was wrong, already knowing I wasn't. The door was closed. That wasn't unusual. But the lock. Emily never locked the bedroom door when she was home alone. Never. I knocked once, quietly. Nothing. I waited, heart hammering in my ears. Then I knocked again, louder this time. Emily? Still no answer. I tried the knob. Locked. I went to the closet in the hallway where we kept the spare keys. We always kept a set in a little ceramic dish tucked behind a box of winter scarves. Gone. My hands were sweating now. I took a deep breath and circled around to the balcony. Our unit had a wraparound terrace that led to the bedroom window. I had to move a potted plant and balance on the ledge to peek inside. The curtains were mostly drawn, but there was just enough space to see through the gap. What I saw made my stomach drop. Emily was sitting on the bed, glass of wine in hand, wearing one of those oversized sweaters she liked. The room was dimly lit, soft lighting, candles. On the other side of the bed, leaning against the pillows, was Brent. Shirt on, shoes off, casual, relaxed, too relaxed. They weren't touching, not then. But the blankets spread across both their laps, the empty bottle of wine on the nightstand, and the tone of the room told me everything I needed to know. They were comfortable. They had done this before. She leaned toward him, laughing softly at something he said. It was a laugh I hadn't heard in months. I don't know how long I stood there. A minute? Less? My thoughts were a blur. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. What I felt was something quieter. Something colder. A kind of clarity I hadn't had in a long time. I didn't knock again. I didn't shout or break the door down. I walked back inside, set the food down on the counter, and grabbed my wallet. Then I opened the banking app on my phone and froze her access to my card. I didn't say a word. Not that night. Not the next morning. She texted me later, "Where are you?" Followed by, "We need to talk." I didn't reply. She came home hours later and acted like she'd just had a stressful meeting. Didn't mention the locked door. Didn't mention Brent. Just asked if I had a weird charge on our account because her card wasn't working. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time I really looked, and I didn't see my fiancé. I saw a stranger. A stranger with my keys, my passwords, and my trust. I said, "You might want to check your bank settings." That's all I said. She watched me, trying to read my face. But I didn't give her anything. Not the pain, not the suspicion. Not the devastation. Nothing. Something inside me had broken. Or maybe it had finally settled. I spent that night on the couch, lying in the dark, my body still, my mind wide awake. Not grieving. Not yet. Just observing. Rewinding. Connecting dots I didn't want to see before. The cologne. The late nights. The story about the hotel. The erased documents. The locked door. The missing key. Brent. She thought she was careful. Maybe she even believed I wouldn't notice. But I did. I noticed everything. And now I was done pretending. I didn't sleep the night I saw them together. Not even a little. I lay on the couch with my eyes fixed on the ceiling, replaying the scene through the window like it was on a reel I couldn't pause. I wasn't even angry yet. Not exactly. I think I was still in shock. Or denial. Or maybe both. But a different version of me started waking up that night. The one who didn't make excuses anymore. The next morning I moved like a ghost. I made coffee out of habit, poured a second mug even though I knew she wouldn't be up for hours. She always slept in after late nights. I used to think it was because she was overworked. Now, I wasn't so sure what her late nights even meant. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at my laptop, fingers hovering over the trackpad. I wasn't sure where to begin, but my instincts were loud now. I knew there was more. That what I had seen, her in the bedroom with Brent, was just the surface. What lay underneath was bigger, wider. Something that had been growing quietly for months, maybe years. I started with our shared email folder. We'd used it to keep track of bills, statements, contracts. It was meant to make life easier. A symbol of transparency, ironically. I noticed right away something was wrong. Some files were missing. Not just the mortgage planning ones, those were already gone. But others too. Receipts from the down payment. The list of mutual purchases we'd tagged for tax write-offs. Even the draft prenup she once said we didn't need but saved, just in case. Deleted. No record of deletion, no backups, no paper trail. Like someone had gone in deliberately, methodically. I checked her browsing history next. Not something I'd ever done before. She was careful. She used private mode for most of it. But one thing slipped through. A tab left open under a different profile. It was a property listing site. She had been looking at apartments. Solo apartments. That made my blood run cold. We hadn't even discussed separating. Not once. Not even after the ring on the table. And yet, there she was, scrolling through listings in a different part of the city, bookmarking lofts with single occupancy in the title. I checked the address bar. One listing had been opened repeatedly. It was a sleek apartment complex just outside downtown. Brand new. The kind of place marketed to young professionals with rooftop lounges and keycard elevators. I Googled the address. Something about it tugged at a distant memory. Then I remembered. It was the same address from that flower delivery. Weeks ago, I'd ordered flowers for Emily, yellow tulips, again from a mobile app she loved. But there had been a glitch during checkout. The order got duplicated. One bouquet was sent to our apartment, the other to that same high-rise. When I asked her about it back then, she played it cool. "Oh, that must have been Brent's place," she said casually. "I used it once when we were testing the client interface on the app. Probably just autofilled." At the time, I believed her. Sort of. I wanted to. Now, it didn't feel like a coincidence at all. I dug deeper. Searched through my email for the invoice. There it was. Delivery to a woman named Melissa White. I stared at the name. I didn't know a Melissa White. Neither did Emily, far as I was aware. I cross-referenced the name with the apartment directory, which, surprisingly, was publicly listed for certain buildings. Melissa White was listed as the tenant in 15B. I checked public records next, ownership, rental agreements. The lease was in Melissa's name, but the emergency contact, Brent. That's when I realized Emily wasn't just cheating. She was living a parallel life. She'd created a second identity, or maybe borrowed one. Either way, she was renting an apartment under a different name, possibly seeing Brent there, and funding it using resources I had helped build. I started cross-checking bank withdrawals. Small transfers, nothing huge, always under different categories. Utilities, donations, freelance, spread out over weeks. I added them up, thousands of dollars. I opened our joint statements and matched every odd payment with a date she'd said she was working late. The overlap was almost perfect. She wasn't working late. She was disappearing. I felt like I was unraveling my own life thread by thread, discovering that it wasn't stitched together at all, but patched, faked, hollow in places I hadn't known were empty. Every part of me ached, but I kept going. I had to. I installed an alert system on our accounts, set up a trigger for any activity involving that address, and I called in a favor from a friend who used to work in private security. He owed me, and I didn't have to say much. I need discreet surveillance, I told him. No confrontation, just clarity. He didn't ask questions, just said, "Give me 48 hours. So I waited. 2 days later, I got a ping on my phone. A delivery scheduled to apartment 15B under Melissa White. Same boutique florist. A note attached, "For the woman who sees what others miss." I felt sick. The delivery was scheduled for noon. I took the afternoon off work, told no one, and drove downtown. I parked across the street and waited. At 12:04 p.m., the delivery guy arrived, holding a bouquet of peonies and white roses, not tulips. A minute later, the door opened. It was Emily, hair tied up, no makeup, wearing a hoodie I didn't recognize. She signed for the flowers and kissed the delivery guy on the cheek. Playfully, not romantically. Just the kind of person who knows how to charm people. She turned back into the apartment, and the door closed behind her. That was it. I had my answer. Not just that she had betrayed me, but that she'd built something else entirely. A whole life. A second skin. One where I didn't exist. I sat in my car for another hour after that. Engine off, fingers gripping the steering wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I felt something sharp and irreversible cut through me. Not heartbreak. Not exactly. It was the loss of certainty. Of who I was. Who she was. What we had. You imagine betrayal as loud. Explosive. A slammed door. A screaming match. But this was quiet. Calculated. Almost graceful. Like someone slowly replacing you in your own story. That night, when I got home, she was already there. Sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled like everything was fine. "Hey babe, want takeout?" I looked at her and said nothing. She didn't even blink. That's when I understood the worst part of it all. She didn't think she'd been caught, because she never thought I was really watching. The next day, Emily disappeared. No argument. No final scream. No storm-out scene from a soap opera. Just gone. I came home from work and immediately noticed how quiet the apartment was, but not the usual kind of quiet. This was the kind that settles in your chest before you even realize what's different. You don't hear it so much as feel it, like air missing from a room you didn't know could be emptied. At first, I thought maybe she was just out again, but something in the air felt hollow. I stepped into the kitchen and froze. There was a stack of wedding invitations sitting on the counter, torn in half. Not even neatly, ripped, ragged, like someone had done it in a rush or a fit of something they couldn't say out loud. The RSVP cards were still inside, some already filled out by guests, names I recognized. Aunt Claire, my childhood friend Nate, Emily's college roommate Megan. All of it shredded. Confetti from a celebration that would never happen. I turned toward the hallway and walked slowly toward the bedroom. Her side of the closet was empty. Gone were the rows of neatly hung blouses, her favorite gray blazer, The shoes she kept in labeled boxes by brand. All gone. Even the wooden jewelry box I bought her on our 3rd anniversary, the one she used to say reminded her of her grandmother's, was missing from the top shelf. There was no note. No, I'm sorry. Or we'll talk later. Not even a post-it on the mirror. It was like she had never lived there at all. I opened the dresser drawers. Hers were empty, mine untouched. Her makeup was gone from the bathroom counter. The scent of her usual lavender lotion had been replaced by the sterile smell of disinfectant, like she'd wiped the place down before vanishing. I walked into the guest room. That's where we kept keepsakes, old family photo albums, our college yearbooks, cards from past birthdays, even some of our childhood stuff in labeled bins. She never liked that room, called it sentimental clutter. But there was one thing in there I hadn't checked in months, something I assumed would always be there. A small antique box, carved dark wood, with initials etched into the lid, E+T. It had belonged to my grandmother. She gave it to me the year before she passed and made me promise to use it to store something that mattered. So I did. Inside were letters from her, old Polaroids from our engagement trip, and a copy of a handwritten vow Emily and I had drafted together before we even got engaged. We'd written them one night over wine and tears, promising to always come back to each other, even when it's hard. That box was gone too. I stood there for a long time, holding the empty space where it used to sit. My breath slowed, almost to a stop. I didn't cry. Not yet. My mind hadn't caught up with my body. I was just absorbing. She didn't just leave. She took things. Not just belongings, but memories. Symbols. Roots. Photos were missing from the living room shelves. She didn't just pull them from the frames. She took the whole frames with her. Ones from our trips to Colorado, the beach in Oregon, that blurry selfie in front of a coffee shop where we laughed so hard we both cried. Gone. Even my nightstand wasn't spared. The little ceramic dish she made me in one of those couples pottery classes, the one that held my keys and watch, that was gone too. It was like she had walked through our life with a checklist, packing only the pieces that made her look like she had something meaningful, and left me with the echoes. I sat down on the edge of the bed, our bed, and stared at the dent in the mattress where she used to sleep. It hadn't even puffed back up yet. Her absence still had shape. It was fresh, real. I should have called someone, a friend, my mom, anybody. But I didn't. I just sat there in that half-empty room, the torn invitation still visible down the hall, and felt the weight of being alone for the first time in a long time. Not just physically alone. Unchosen. That's what it felt like. Like she had stood at a fork in the road, looked at the life we built together and said, "No thanks," without even the decency to explain why. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was abandonment. It was erasure. I checked my phone. No texts. No missed calls. No message to tell me where she went or when she'd be back. Just silence. Her last message had been from the night before. "Want me to grab anything from the store?" I opened her social media profiles. All still active. No posts. No tags. Nothing out of the ordinary. Except her relationship status was gone. Quietly removed. Like it never existed. She hadn't just left our home. She had started scrubbing away the evidence. I checked the shared calendar we used. All future events were gone. Dentist appointments. Birthdays. The cake tasting we'd scheduled next week. Erased. Our shared Spotify playlist. Deleted. Not unfollowed, deleted. The travel board on Pinterest with saved pins for our honeymoon ideas? Gone. Even our Amazon account had been switched. I was locked out. The password had been changed sometime that day. It all pointed to one thing. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a breakdown or an escape in the heat of the moment. This was a plan. She had planned to disappear. Not with rage. Not with regret. But with precision. That realization broke me more than anything else. Because it meant she hadn't just fallen out of love. She'd prepared for my absence. She'd anticipated it. Expected it. I got up and wandered through each room, trying to account for everything she'd taken. A book from my nightstand. A mug she once said was too ugly, but now apparently meant something. She'd even taken a fleece hoodie of mine she never wore but always said smelled like home. The things she left behind? Impersonal. Soulless. A few notebooks, a stray earring back, a receipt in the junk drawer. But nothing of weight. Nothing that could tie her here. She didn't even leave a forwarding address. I sat on the floor that night, right where the antique box had been, and just stared at the carpet. My head was silent. Not numb, but drained. The kind of silence that doesn't ache, it just hovers. Eventually, I got up and opened the laptop. No more guessing. If she wanted to vanish without a word, fine. But I wasn't going to pretend it didn't happen. I wasn't going to erase myself in the process. I started cataloging everything. Notes, photos of the apartment before and after, **TS of bank transfers, delivery invoices. I compiled it all, methodically, slowly, like I was curating a crime scene. Because that's what it was. The scene of a slow, quiet betrayal. That night, for the first time, I locked the bedroom door behind me. Not to keep her out, but because I knew she wouldn't be coming back. I met George, one of Emily's co-workers, for coffee. Quietly, he confirmed what I feared. Emily had a pattern. She called men like me her insurance. She'd move in, build a life, then drain what she needed. He'd seen her text someone under the name Jen, sending files that weren't hers. It wasn't just betrayal, it was manipulation. I left that meeting feeling like I'd never really known her at all. A week later, I found the antique box at a pawn shop. Alongside it, a flash drive filled with profiles, bank records, aliases. It was a system, a life built on lies. I didn't seek revenge. I sold the apartment, changed my number, moved to a new city. No goodbyes, no closure. Just distance. Now, the only thing I kept was that box. Not as a wound, but as proof I made it out. She didn't erase me. I survived her.